Everybody, it's Al from Boston. I have some very special guests joining me this evening. Kyle, my former squad leader from the Marine Corps, and Trey Collins, Trey Trades. What's up?
How you doing, man? It's good to be here. Another day above ground.
Awesome. Kyle, thanks again for joining me.
Always.
So you guys, I promised you guys I would talk about how we came to the conclusion of AMC has the potential to go to $1 million. And Kyle is going to explain it to you. I have the Excel ready for you, but I wanted to show you first where my data source was. We all know that the data sources that we're getting from everything from in some parts of Bloomberg, Fintel, all those people, they're all corrupt. We've talked about this over and over and over again. So I went directly to the SEC and I found the SEC data for failure to delivers. Now, if you take a look, this is the list for 2021, right? We started from here, January, the second week of January, and we went all the way up to October, I believe is what it was. And these are not, these are compressed files that are basically just notepads. So we had to scour through them and find the data and then put the data into an Excel, which we did. And that's over here. And I'll show you that here in a minute. But let me tell you guys, this is where you're going to find clarity. All right. Is the AMC stock going to go to $1 million? I don't think so. Does it have the potential? Absolutely. What matters is the Constitution one has and the conviction one has to hold. And that is something that is individual. That is not a collective thing. That is not a group thing. That is individual by the person. And I want Kyle to first go ahead and kick off, and we'll get started on it. And we'll talk about how Kyle and I came to this conclusion. And then we'll talk about market manipulations, the current events of 2021 that we've experienced, and what we're expecting for 2022. Kyle, you ready?
Yep, no problem. So, and Trey, you should really like this because it's the majority of it is theoretical to begin with. And like we were discussing earlier, it's basically this idea there are too many unknowns in the market. They're these players, major players, institutional players that are not required to disclose their trading information. And as a result, we have two options. We can take big guesses or we can look at raw data, but even the raw data will only take us so far. So we went through these text files and we peeled off all the AMC information. We loaded it painstakingly. And we weren't using algorithms. He and I are not fancy by any means. And
I barely know how to use OBS, man. I feel you.
Exactly. So we loaded this stuff into an Excel file, and then we started segregating the data. The idea is, an FTD carries over across week to week, but the maximum that a single FTD can last is 21 days. That's the limit that Citadel as a market maker gets before it has to cover that FTD. So we received a lot of protest initially when we put this thing out because they were saying, well, they flow week to week, but you go back and you look at the numbers, and because the data is getting released every 2 weeks, but you've got a 3-week processing time. So there's 1 week that overlaps, and then a week that it doesn't, a week that it doesn't, a week that it doesn't. It basically all averages out anyway. So we went through and we figured out that every 21 days there should be these failures to deliver are closing, and they're doing that with the synthetic of an at the money or a deep in the money call and an at the money put. And so what I wanted to come up with initially was a theoretical maximum. What is if everything just went so wrong for Citadel, absolutely worst case scenario, what is the maximum number of synthetic shares that could be out on the market? And so we did that. We went through and we processed it every 21 days. And my part of my logic there was that, in an ideal world, you would want a synthetic share, because it's a married call and put, to have a long lifespan, but they're probably not doing that because buying a deep in the money freaking call for a year out is an astronomical price when you're talking about thousands and thousands of options, let alone an at the money put. So my guess was like a single week is too small, right? So my guess was probably about a 1 month span. So we added that on top of the 3 weeks, as every month, essentially a new cycle would start over, because we get to that month and now they've got another failure to deliver on those, the call and the put. So that recycled back into the system. So they were cycling in and cycling out, cycling in, cycling out. And every 21 days, we're getting another batch. And we come up with the theoretical maximum of 51, what did we say? 51 billion shares?
51, yeah. 51 billion is the maximum.
So
And
now that is if everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong for Citadel. Now that is extremely unlikely. So then we start cutting. Okay, we take a look at what's real. We start to analyze the margins of error for each section, for each period of time, the likelihood that they used single blocks of time versus multiple months or anything like that. And we end up being able to slice about 70 to 75% of that pie away. But even when we do that, we still get about 15 to 20 billion shares that are left over, even after we tried to throw out as much of the data as bad data as possible. And the whole idea is it's not precise. It's notoriously imprecise because of the sheer lack of information. All we're trying to do is calculate how far off could we be wrong, and it still is plausible. And we end up with this really nice 15 billion shares left over, and we're still talking, it's still in excess of 10 times, 15, 20 times the float. It's absolutely massive how this stuff stacks up. And that's not even accounting for like naked shorting and anything else that could be sitting on top of that, or existing reported short interest that's sitting on top of that, which right now we're pushing, the reported short interest is pushing 50. So when we look
40% margin of error
on the reported short interest, no.
I meant on the FTDs.
On the FTDs, we gave it a 75% margin of error. So you defaulted on the low side, 75% down, and we still end up with all of those. Okay, that is a huge discount on all the data. We're throwing out 3/4 of the year, and we're still coming up.
So no matter what happens, we think that this has the legs, because there's so many shares that are outstanding. So many synthetics out there that even if 40% or is it 30% of all the retail investors and everyone else were to paper hand, you'd still have enough to clear $100,000 per share just by letting it run.
Yeah, so that was my initial determination when I made that calculation back in April or May, was that even if 40%, it was initially 40% of the holding retail investors just totally gave up and walked out with $100 or something like that. The remaining 60% could still take it up in excess of 100,000. And I had targeted my floor at 130. That being said, that was back when I made that calculation, I had counted those shares at like 2 billion. Is essentially 4 times the float. Now we are so far past that. The idea of it hitting $1 million a share, it's not impossible. Now where we get into the complexities is the stuff we've been talking about the last few times with the DTCC and the insurance, and whether or not this stuff is going to be like they're going to have the money to cover it, or whether it's going to be a robbing Peter to pay Paul situation.
Right. And that's a conversation we had with Houston Wade. What happens if the prime broker defaults? What happens if, if Fidelity loses all $800 billion worth of liquidity? Well, the first thing that happens, there's a halt. And then there's a period of time where they either solicit the government for a bailout. Yes, the broker itself for a bailout, immediate liquidity from the federal government, or it defaults to the DTCC, right? And then they start doing the
Sure.
buying. At that level, it's accelerating the purchasing. As soon as that defaults, you're talking about any available shares that are there. They just start getting bought out. Ba, 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 bang, ba, bang, ba, bang. Anything, either it be fractional shares or whole shares. And that's something that I had to talk to really get understanding from Houston. He had a better grasp of how it works. But these guys essentially have this insurance policy, and there's talk, oh, well, insurance companies don't like to pay. Well, yeah, but they have
Of course.
they have a fiduciary responsibility to close out all the transactions. They have to. They're on a time hack, believe it or not. They have to. They can't leave open positions open like that. So they have to close it out. Now, it was suggested that, well, what would happen if they claimed it was fraud? DTC says it's fraud, Your Honor, to go to a federal court. Well, it's very simple. Then DTC was complicit in that fraud, because who ultimately are the ones issuing the shares?
The closing
Right.
company.
You know, you can't have it both ways.
But here's one extra little tidbit to add into this. Remember, of course, that we had that flurry, and it started probably in July or August. There was a flurry of new DTCC regs that were passed. You remember all that, including one that took effect at the beginning of October that required every major trading institution or bank to hold $1 trillion in liquidity off the top, right? That was passed by the DTCC for this specific reason, to cover their asses. And I do believe that was not just for your standard banking institutions, your Bank of America, your Merrill Lynch, all that kind of stuff, but also for some of these hedge funds acting in the interests of private investors. So I would imagine that each one of these guys is holding it, on the large scale, like Citadel would be, $1 trillion in liquidity off the top. So that's we're starting out pretty comfortable right there. The DTCC has supposedly, again, 67 trillion in insurance that they can cover. I don't know how they would mobilize that degree of financial capability in a short span of time. I would imagine it would have to be some sort of loop where they're sucking in money and they're spitting out money, and it's like said,
This is accumulations now. These guys at the DTCC have a membership fee that they charge big banks. They charge all these organizations. And I think what's going to happen is those fees that they've tacked on all the years, that is what's the composition of the insurance, right? Those membership fees that they've had. Plus, they have money that they make within the company itself through trading, through index funds, through Vanguard and all those. So they're actually making money, low risk investments, and they have a yield. So that's where the majority of that money does come from,
Makes sense. So they might have it then.
But
is that insurance for the DTCC, or is that how much asset servicing they are actively trading is $63 trillion? Because I'm looking at the DTCC website, and that's saying that's their asset servicing. So I don't think that's an insurance for 63 trillion.
It was $67 trillion. And I think the idea was that because the DTCC is the only clearing company that's allowed to do what it can do. So I think there are particular government standards that it has to uphold, including the entirety of their holdings plus X%. If I had to guess, if you were to dig down into the fine print of the regulation, having spent a lot of time dealing with different CFRs and regulations, that generally tends to be how stuff ends up worded out. Is you cover this in total plus X%, and then we will certify you to be the only operator in the area.
Okay, so let's hypothesize and say that the DTCC has a $67 trillion insurance cap. What sort of estimates do you have for the other market makers, clearing houses, the National Security Clearing Corporation, other hedge funds institutions, banks, the Fed? What sort of money have you guys drawn from data or from theory that they'd be able to pan out in the terms of $1 million payday?
So NSCC is let's refine this real quick.
Sure.
The NSCC and the DTC are all under the DTCC, right? The clearinghouse,
Okay.
and then the actual the ledger keeper, which is the DTC.
Right.
If those guys get wiped out, let's say the 67 trillion is divvied up in hard assets, or the better yet, there is a fiduciary. What is the word I'm looking for? There's a word for this. I just don't remember it right now. But basically, they're long assets that they hold that can be liquidated or held and given as a credit by the federal government, and they liquidate it later on, or they hold that position until they're ready to pay the government back whatever they were charged, if you would. It's like a charge card almost, in a sense. But it wouldn't be necessarily the prime broker at that point. It would probably be the Fed that picks up that tab if it gets to that point. But remember, in the event that it goes to $1 million, which is, let me tell you, you'd have to have some diamond hands, bro. You have to be that guy to get to $1 million. If you're that guy and you get there, God bless you. But if you happen to be one of those guys that gets there, that money's coming directly from the Fed. It's going to come from the reserve. And here's the problem afterwards. Here's the big issue. It's going to be in the trillions. That means the market capitalization of AMC would be in the trillions, right? But it wouldn't be that way for more than a week, a couple of days. If it reaches $1 million, it wouldn't be that way for a long time. It would reach a certain, theoretical maximum, but then it would plummet down into whatever. That's what you guys feel. That's where a lot of things, or a lot of people don't understand that. Yeah, it can get up to that height, but it comes crashing down afterwards because people are going to be cashing out. That's the other problem I see with it. The other thing is this. The other thing is this, right? If that level and that capitalization and the money that's shelled out by the federal government, you wouldn't have the full effect of that money for another 5 years because of the inflation. It's like if you're printing that kind of money out in this kind of environment, this economic period in time, the zeitgeist and everything. No, I have a hard time. You're not going to get the value that you're looking for, Kyle.
Well, we lack the appropriate sense of scope to understand just how much money there is in the given world, just moving around on a day-to-day basis. I think somebody tried to do the math and it came out somewhere around $140 trillion a day is movement. Like velocity of money stuff. $140 trillion is moving from one place to another on a given day-to-day basis. But it's so big, it's so much that we really lack the ability to see it. So that's in a single day. The ability to hit these higher numbers, it's not as catastrophic as most people have probably been led to believe based off of what various pundits have said. So the other thing, of course, to take into consideration is while that span, the apex of the parabola is probably only going to last a couple of days most, the lead up to getting there may take a significantly longer time. And this is addressing Trey's previous comment. Is because not all hedge funds are created equal, and Citadel is up there at the top as the end level boss, but we've got a lot of hedge funds between us and them that are all going to go down in the process. And remember, we used to joke about it like back in January, February, is like the first guy that covers lives and everybody else doesn't get to walk away. Right. We were joking about that back then, and that's we're going to see all of these hedge funds leading up to Citadel are going to soften that punch. They're going to go out for everything they have, and that first one's going to live, whoever it may be, Susquehanna maybe, but because they're clever, they think outside the box. But the rest of those guys, they're going to fold like crisp laundry. And so, if you wanted to calculate out a number like that, Trey, it would just simply be the existing assets of the company minus the leverage of the company plus the insurance of the company.
Sure.
And there's only 26 hedge funds that are on this play right now. That's somewhere around there. I can't remember.
That's actually gone down.
Yeah,
That's gone down significantly.
It's not nearly as much as it was.
So they're covering. So when we're trading sideways, they're actually covering.
No, it's not that. I think that people, because of the visibility of the profile, I think not as many companies are reporting their short positions. And as a result, it probably looks like they dropped out or something like that. But if they were covering, we would really have seen it. That's like a
Fintel thing right there. That's a Fintel joke that they play on us.
Yeah, they'll tell congratulations on your Twitter, your Fintel Twitter ban, by the way.
Yeah, no, it was a proud moment. It was
today,
moment.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it just happened.
What, Trey, you got blocked by them?
Yeah, I tweeted out essentially just saying, kind of weird that Fintel's blocking people when they're just asking about data and reporting. Then I got blocked like 5 or 10 minutes later, something like that.
You're invited to leave.
It's kind of beautiful.
It's symbolic. It's symbolic. Yeah. It's full circle.
No, I love it.
Trey was invited to leave.
I'd like to come back, right? I'm going to come back to this theory. And in my video, I pointed out what I viewed as flaws. And let's play a game of hypotheticals, right? This is just me kind of spitballing what I think. I'm going to say that the number of shares that you guys have hypothesized, right? 15 billion shares. Let's run with that for now, right? 15 billion, and we'll say a million. I'm going to say that both of those, let's just pretend they're fact for a second. If we got all those 15 billion shares up to cover, let's say 100,000 or $1 million a share, there's a couple of problems that I have. The first one being this. I like to look at history, right? Let's just take a step away from the numbers and think about it like this. January, when we had the oh shit moment and all the market makers and the hedge funds didn't have any idea what was happening and the buy button was taken away. I think what that comes down to is an insurance/clearing fund issue. I mean, we see that in documentation. They said, hey, we didn't have enough money. We couldn't make this happen. We had to stop things choked on my spit. God damn it. I always do that. We had to stop things for a while, which you guys have already addressed, right? That definitely has already been addressed. And that's really banking on one thing happening here, which is people will, without a doubt, hold through the halt. Now, I can't speak for everybody, right? There's a lot of people in this play. I think there'll be some that do. I think there'll be some that don't, but nobody knows at the end of the day. That's not the thing I have the biggest issue with. For me, it's money, right? So let's talk about money for a second. The GDP of the United States in 2018 was about $20 trillion. The GDP of the world in 2017 was about $80 trillion. For AMC to hit $1 million a share, that makes a market cap of $513 trillion, which is 25 times the GDP of the United States in 2018. That's an astronomical number. If that was to come to fruition, right? Let's just pretend that it does. Let's say it hits $1 million, everybody cashes out, the market cap crashes back down. The price of a gallon of milk would be like $200. The entire economy would collapse. I don't see it. This is the reason why I fundamentally believe that it's not possible. Is the government, the Fed, the United States, Senate, Congress would all step in way before that happened because they know that they'd watch the entire economy collapse.
I don't think
I got you one on this really, really easily. And it's going back to fundamentals. And that is, we now exist in a market where the fundamentals of equity do not have any direct impact on a share's value. Okay, the idea of the price of the AMC shares going up to $1 million a share, that doesn't mean that AMC has X trillion dollars of worth of equity. It doesn't have an impact on the GDP. It's more of a flash in the pan. What we are seeing is just a bubble forming that is ultimately destined to pop. But it's not going to crash the economy. It's not going to cause the price of milk to go to $200,000 a gallon. The only thing that does that, amusingly enough, is the Fed printing money. And now that's the big joke, of course, as we've been going through the past 2 years. And the Fed has printed 25% of the entire money supply has been printed in the last 2 years.
I think it's more than that, but yeah.
Yeah, now it is. It's even, yeah, but it's a huge amount. And we are essentially, and of course the Fed ran out of cash again in October, and they have been printing to solve their problems because of the reverse repo. And now the reverse repo is up to 1.9 trillion.
Yeah, it's up there.
So, which is, oof, man, and just getting tingles. It's it's always, they keep kicking this can down the road, and every time they kick the can down the road, the crash is going to be a little bit worse. But
yeah, it's scary to think about.
Yeah. That being said, we're living right now in an era of 6.8% sustained inflation, which we haven't lived in an era of sustained inflation since the 1930s.
Yeah, the Great Depression.
Yeah, the last air quotes sustained inflation was in 1980 for 3 months. It was not a big jump, and now we've got half a year of sustained inflation rates. But what this tells us, with just from the most basic perspective, is that the Fed is still printing money to solve their problems, and that's the only thing that's really going to change the price of a gallon of milk or something like that.
And
okay,
you got to talk about the arc as well. When this thing arcs, there's going to be like a couple of people that might fire off a couple rounds that actually gets picked up at that price. A couple people, right? But the fact is, the potential is there. If you want, if you're bold enough, if your balls are that big, and you want to go out and try to hit that moonshot, it's definitely there. You could YOLO that. I don't know. I'm not personally going to. I'm going to try to cut out at a certain price I have in my mind. But does it have the ability to break 100,000? Absolutely. There's not a doubt in my mind.
Yeah, we could have hit 100,000 or 100,000 a share at 2 billion shares worth of synthetics. That was super easy.
I just think in terms of dollar signs, right? So let's pick the middle. Let's say 500K, right? Let's just spitball 500K right now. That would come out to about $255 trillion. So if you've got a DTCC insurance policy of $67 trillion, let's say the Fed's willing to print off some money. You've got some institutions, some hedge funds, maybe that adds up to $5-10 trillion. The Fed's still porking up a lot of that. And what it comes down to at the end of the day is back to GDP, which derives from how much money circulates from the Fed. Where's the money going to come from that it's not going to affect the economy, or in a sense that the Fed would allow that to happen in the first place because it digs a hole? Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, it does, with one caveat. First of all, how many apes do you have selling at 500K?
Nah, I'd imagine not a bunch.
Okay, so that's important, right?
That's why I picked the middle instead of a million. We can play it at 100K if you want. 100K is 51 trillion.
We can do it anywhere, but the first thing you have to do is cut up the freaking pie. You have to say, okay, we had this many apes paper hand inside of $100. We had this many apes make it to $1 million or $1,000. We had this whole crowd of guys from New York who all sold at $15,000 for some reason. And so on and so forth. We have to slice up that pie. How many guys are actually going to make it to the 500K mark? So let's talk hypotheticals, and we say, okay, do we want to say 20% have got the balls to make it? And with 20%, we can now factor at real numbers, because we know we have roughly 4 million apes, and we hold 90% of the float
absolutely
in real time. We could chop this down. Okay. So if we do that, then we can say, let's see here at we'll call it 80,000 shares. Or no, because we're 500 million. Okay, 80 million shares get sold at 500,000. Let's work with that.
Sure.
So that's I think that's the right, and this is in the spirit of what you're trying to hit.
Yeah,
So,
no, I get it. I get it. That would come out to $40 trillion.
there we
Doable.
go.
That's doable.
That is doable. That's covered by the DTCC's insurance policy, and that's assuming that we didn't chip at that number all the way up, right? You know, with all the other hedge funds that have had to drop out of the way, plus Citadel's entire liquidation. So $500,000 is achievable, you know, for the top 20% of the retail apes that have the wherewithal, the cojones to stick with that.
Right. And also the government, the federal government has crypto holdings more than you could possibly understand that we can't really talk about though. I know this for a fact. I can tell you right now, the government has so much crypto that you would freak out if you knew.
Oh, no, I already know. And they've been confiscating Bitcoin for a long time now, and they have
their own
massive
farms,
stash.
man.
Yeah.
I overheard a conversation, and I won't say who, in a secure facility a long time ago, that our government has their own facility that has their own crypto. They've been earning crypto for a long time, and it's their backup plan in case there's ever something totally effed up that happens, and we need cash liquidity right then and there. And you know, that's forward thinking in government right there. That's a DoD type of initiative. Have this money, squirrel it away in case something
almost like the DoD comes from the government, huh? That's wild.
It just makes sense to me. It makes perfect sense to me that they would have this.
You have to, of course, appreciate that it's a retaliatory action, because who started collecting Bitcoin or crypto in general first was North Korea.
Yeah,
they were using it to get around the sanctions, and because it's an everywhere, you know, currency.
you just know some kid in cybercom at like Fort Sill or something, or cybercom is hacking into North Koreans, you know, depository of Bitcoin and just swiping it and bringing it back here. Poor Kim's gonna wake up. What happened to my crypto wallet? You're fucked, mate. You're fucked. You're gone. That's it. It's over. That's it. They're looking around like, what happened? It's your ass.
And now we're going to need to do a video on the crypto party one day, because I feel like there are not enough people that are enlightened to what's going to happen in the next couple of years, and we should probably take the time to get them on the straight and narrow. So
one of my big things, Trey, right, is the reason why I got into this shit is for one reason. It's so people don't paper hand early. That's my pet peeve in life. I have made it my sole purpose in this channel to try to educate people on what these things look like. You know, what's a rinse and repeat? What's that look like? Why do they do that? What's the purpose behind it? And that's the composition of my YouTube page. It's just the bullshit that I see, that I document and I educate people on, right?
Yeah, man. And I'll tell you what, we had this talk offline, but like I love what you guys do. I watched your stuff. I've seen a decent chunk of it. And the only thing that I couldn't wrap my head behind, and to be honest with you, I'm still pretty skeptical of, is the price target. And that's it. And at the end of the day, I can tell what you guys talk about is meant to help people. And that's ultimately what's most important to me. And I think what should be most important to most people is, are people going to benefit from the information that I'm sharing in the community that I'm building, you know? And I know that's what you guys stand for. So that's why I wanted to come on and chat with you, you know?
We appreciate that.
Yeah, we're all about it.
The big thing right now, once this thing kicks off, is the authoritative data streams. That's what keeps me up at night now. I've been trying to find a data streaming, a market data company, and I was trying to figure out a way to do this cost effectively, trying to like say, hey, this is good market data that doesn't come from the market maker. It comes from the actual source. It hasn't been tampered with. There's no hard coding associated with it. A lot of times what I've seen is hard coding associated with the actual market data when it comes out. And that confuses people, that misleads people. The DWAC situation is a perfect example of that. I saw that happening there. So one of the things that I'm trying to get done, I'm trying to do right now, is I'm reaching out to all these different lawyers from these data stream companies and trying to figure out a way how I can do this cost effectively, get a data stream with all the different exchanges directly from the exchange to us to the ape community, because let me tell you, I'm not going to rely on Robinhood, Webull. I'm not relying on any of those guys, man. I'm looking for a data source that has not been touched by Citadel or any of its buddies, because that thing is it's like an octopus. It's got tentacles everywhere, and it reaches out and touches you. And I'm just everywhere I look. Yeah, we do work with Citadel. Do you do any work with their data stream? Yeah, well, we source our data stream through them. Buy, click. You know, I see so much of that. It makes me crazy.
No, it's a duopoly, man. It's the way the market's built. It's nearly impossible to not be able to find something that's not tied with Citadel or Virtu. You know, I always see people say, well, Citadel, has money in this, or Citadel has money in that. Virtu has money in this. Virtu has money in that. They have money in basically everything that exists in the market. I mean, that's the way that the whole thing is designed, which is frustrating, but it's very difficult to avoid for sure.
So 2022, talk to me about market. What are your thoughts on how the market's going to play out Q1, Q2? Give me your best shot.
I have been diving pretty heavy into macroeconomics, the history of economics to begin with. And what I find to be very fascinating that I've been paying a lot of attention to is how much money is getting siphoned back and forth between the Fed and banks via the reverse repurchase agreement market. And what I've noticed in terms of trend, and what I think you're going to watch play out, and I'm actually not going to go super into detail yet, because I've actually got a video that I'm working on right now that I think is going to be a banger, but I think you're going to watch a repeat of the Roaring 20s and the Great Depression. And there's a lot of really crazy similarities that you're watching happen a century later that I'm not going to dive into, because like I said, I'm making a video on this, and I think people are going to be pretty surprised when this stuff is all put together. But I think this year is going to see probably some form of a deep recession. I think that the SPY is due for some form of a pullback. I don't know if that's going to be in Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, but I think it's going to be a blip in terms of the next 3, 4, 5 years. There's not very many things that I agree with Jim Cramer on, but I think that he got this one right. And he said that he thinks he's going to see a repeat of the Roaring 20s. Now, the problem is that he left out what comes after the Roaring 20s, and that's the Great Depression, right? Yeah. So I'm personally watching from a macroeconomic perspective for that to happen, and I'm going to leave the details out for later. So I hope that's a good enough explanation for you.
I'm going to throw a little bit of spin onto that same concept, because I very wholeheartedly believe this. In fact, I had started looking for a crash around 2019 when the auto repossession market stared kicking up.
Yeah,
and it was one of the first signs that people were having their cars repossessed because they couldn't afford to pay on their cars, and we ended up with this big disparity in the economy, where people on the lower end they have no money to pay their bills, and then the Fed is pumping more money into the stock market. The companies are doing stock buybacks, repurchasing agreements, and so on and so forth, and is driving the price of the stocks even higher. So suddenly, like, the securities market is at an all-time high, and yet nobody can afford to pay their bills. So it's a kind of a conundrum. Anyway, the spin, and you'll appreciate this in a macroeconomic sense, is that what it's going to come down to is not economics at all, but politics. Because we're bifurcated right down the middle right now, and our politics are very, very streamlined, and both sides would like nothing more than the crash to happen on their terms so they can blame it on the other guy.
Right.
And so the real tug of war here is going to be who has the most control over the market. Whatever side has the most control of the market is going to cause the market to dump at the worst possible time for the other guy. Now, maybe some people who understand, lobbyists and political donations and stuff like that have a better sense of who has that kind of pull, because I don't. I'm not a freaking political scientist or any of this stuff, but we take a look at that and we say, okay, that they can at least put forward a guess as to who has the upper hand in that sense. And then we'll say, okay, if it's the right side has it, then it's going to be right before the midterms. They're going to tank the thing, put it all at Biden's feet, and the Democrats are going to get swept off the plate. If it's the other way around, it's going to be the crash is going to happen earlier. It's going to happen end of Q1. That's going to give them the time. They're going to if the Democrats have the poll, they crash it early. They then get to clean up. They blame the previous administration, whoever they want to blame, and so on and so forth. But they get to spend 6 months cleaning it up, and then they go to the polls and say, "Hey, look at how much good work we've done over the past 6 months trying to repair the economy after this crash. You should vote for us."
DC shuffle, yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, I agree with both you guys. My only difference is this, I don't think it's going to be financially driven, this recession. I think it's going to be energy and labor shortages that are going to create this recession and subsequent depression. I just made a video on this yesterday, but I'll just give you a quick recap what I think. And I'm, like I said before in the video, I'm not picking on the Democrats. I just don't think they understand economics. Or they just don't understand that if you cram down oil prices and oil production in the United States, inflation rises and lower income people suffer. That's what they just have never figured out. We killed this nation, Biden especially. He's canceled pipelines, drilling permits. We lost oil dominance in the United States in 2021, which is a huge blow to American excellency. I think it's terrible. And then on top of that, we had a great relationship with TransCanada, right? Great pipeline program. Things were starting to get cheaper. This was a Trump policy thing that he put together. And now, since they killed that, you're talking about food prices going up in January. You're talking about 5 to 6% interest rates going up in March, and an increased shortage of labor because of this mandatory, and I'm not trying to get political, the vaccination program. You're talking about a withdrawal of human capital, American human capital from the workplace. Yeah, it's going to shit. It's going to take a massive shit, and it's going to be oil driven. Oil, the way, I don't know, this morning I went to go to church and I filled up and it was $3.70 something. At this rate, oil is going to be like $90 a gallon very, very soon, man. And the ability of this nation to try to frack and get cheap oil is the reason why everything was cheap. The deregulations and the tax cuts. Now they're talking about stagflation. Everybody's talking about stagflation now. It's a big deal. Let me tell you something. You brought up GDP, Trey, right? I'm going to tell you something. GDP is going to get affected big time in 2022. And it's because of those two things that we talked about, the energy and the labor shortage, and that what I call the trifecta, the housing market. And the housing market with their 18%, it's completely unsustainable. Like, who do we think we are trying to get away with this? 18% in a year? Are you kidding me? We're going to get our asses handed to us in the global markets. We're going to get killed. Sorry.
I bought my house out of North Carolina in December of 2020, and I just got a buyer who's going to be buying it for me now. I'm actually closing the deal, and I'm actually making like a $40,000 profit on the house with very minimal changes. I mean, I've renovated some stuff, but I think that in and of itself is like a huge imbalance. It's not really something you see across real estate. And in the past 10 years, that sort of growth in a 12-month period of time, it's pretty disgusting.
So for both of you here, let me go a little bit freakonomics on you, because I can hit all of these things. First of all, with regards to the oil, Al, think in long terms. Like, when you go to Dubai or Abu Dhabi, is their economy focused on oil?
No, it's actually, no. Yeah, go ahead.
Why? Because they know that oil is a finite resource that they have to wean away their dependence on.
Right.
So they have tried to focus that in, to get as far away from oil as they possibly can. Right. The United States, especially in the long term, does not benefit from jumping on oil. It's a short-term fix. It's a band-aid for solutions, but it doesn't help fix the problem in the long term.
Listen, that's a social problem. You're talking about a social problem.
No. This is a financial problem.
No, what I'm saying is the reason why that problem exists is because of social reasons. You're talking about intellectual capital either being not expended. People will come to the United States, learn as much as they possibly can, and they're going back to their own countries, and that intellectual capital is wasted. That's gone. That's money that we spend educating people, and they leave, and lo and behold, other countries are getting smarter and richer, and they're gaining up. that is an assault on American exceptionalism. We will feel that one day in our wallets, or our kids will.
All right. So moving on to the next thing, it just to the last point on the gas is, you can solve your high price of oil with some solar panels on a roof and a Tesla or an EV in your garage, as long as it doesn't break down. But so the next thing is that the housing market right now, there's a huge housing boom, and it's like, doesn't make any sense. Everybody's like, wow, this has got to be a huge bubble, except I went and did the research, and it turns out it's not a bubble at all. This is absolutely going to weird you out, but it's a byproduct of COVID, and which is what's going to be in the third topic here too. So COVID created a new work environment, which basically said you don't have to show up at an office anymore. You can get on a Zoom call. You can do all of your work remotely via VPN, and be you can live where you want and work halfway across the country. So all these people that were living in New York City or downtown LA or Sacramento or wherever the hell they want, they're all leaving the city and they're going to wherever they feel happy. Okay. So right now in Dallas, where I live, there's a huge influx of people from California that are moving to Dallas, just unbelievable numbers. And I had been talking with my realtor, and he was saying I could get an extra $100,000 for my house now, which was mind blowing to me. I say, why? It's not like that the price of the neighborhood has gone up or anything like that. Well, he says, no, it's not. It's the availability. It's people, there's so many people coming in that they're fighting for the available spaces. And since they're used to paying $2 million for a 600 square foot hut in downtown LA, the idea of paying $300,000 or $400,000 for an 1,800 square foot house, that's massively appealing to them. Mm-hmm. So that's the benefit, number one. And like I said, it's a byproduct of that COVID fallout, where people are able to work remotely, so they aren't beholden to being stuck in their previous areas of operation. Now we get to the labor situation, which is it's COVID all over again, but in a different way. When COVID started, you had a bunch of the elderly people, like guys that were right on the fence. Maybe they're in their mid 60s and they were choosing to work past retirement, or they were like right up there. It's the Social Security age. And with COVID coming around, they all exit the market at the same time, go on the dole or pick up their pension or whatever, because they're like, well, this is the time to get out before my business goes out of business or something crazy like that. So they did that. At the same time, especially when COVID first started, who was at most risk? It was the elderly people above age 60 and so on, which is also the target market for the baby boomers, which until a couple of years ago was the largest generation in history. Okay. So between the retirements and the early deaths, we lost a sizable portion of the employment power of the country, but we didn't notice because everybody was sitting at home anyway. Since everything was closed down,
it's a paradigm shift.
Yeah. So what we're seeing is the COVID forced people out of the market early, and then we have all these gaps, and there's a power vacuum, right? Because I know from my own career that it was very, very difficult to move up, because a lot of these people got to the top of the game in the early 80s, and they've just been sitting there ever since, like their entire careers. And it made it impossible for everybody else to move up. Well, now suddenly everybody can move up, and that creates demand in all sorts of places. So somebody who is sitting there working at a Starbucks trying to find an opportunity in their career field suddenly finds an opportunity in their career field, and now Starbucks doesn't have any employees. So it's not that there is actually a labor shortage. It's that there are more opportunities on the market than people have previously been able to take advantage of in the past. So where previously they might have been stuck in a particular city with a particular low-paying job, now there is enough money out there for them to take the risk and go take a bigger job or a better position somewhere else. And that's what they're doing.
So I agree that COVID has changed the world. What we know is traditional social contracts have been changed completely, right? The entire demographic, the human demographic and the world has changed completely. When I look at the system of governance that we have now in terms of our nation, we're talking about now, instead of going to court, you sitting on a Zoom call. And there's a disconnection there, a human disconnection, and it's evolving into something that is just not very pleasant. And that's going to have an economic impact. Let me tell you something. Governments right now are very constrained on what they can do, what they can't do because of this virus. This thing is holding us hostage to the point where everything is going to be permanently changed and a new social order is dawning. But we can't articulate what it is. We don't know how to frame it. We don't know what to call it. We just know that it's ever evolving. And in that dynamicism that's occurring, that is where I see the most danger, because it's a runaway train, man. We're not talking about just social changes that we're seeing here in the United States based on COVID. We're talking about just a global meshing, if you will, a hyper connectivity, which is a byproduct of globalization. Something is happening that is driving these changes, and I cannot, for the life of me, figure out what that is.
Money.
No,
Money.
It's
It
never.
is absolutely money.
Oh,
It is
stop,
always
dude.
money.
It's not that simple. I think there is a segment of human society right now who are just, and this isn't a migration issue. This is just a human capital issue that people are tired and they want forcible change, and they're using COVID as that catalyst.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, there are definitely people at the bottom who are frustrated and using COVID as the opportunity to try and look for something better. But one of the things that COVID did for me, I was furloughed from my job, and when I had to suddenly cut back on my budget and live on unemployment, I cut away a lot of the extra fat that I had been enjoying in my budget, and went living really, really lean. And once I realized how lean I could live, I went and took a different job that started out paying me less, but ultimately paid me a lot more, because I knew I could get through that low period first. So I was able to seek out a better opportunity. And I think other people have probably done the same thing.
So you would agree that there is an erosion of human security going on right now globally that's just transcending just finances.
I think that has been going on for 40 years. But
I kind of think COVID is a double-edged sword. It did some good things, which also causes some negative side effects. So like for myself personally, COVID led me to, at the time when it started, be able to really dive into my running career. I wanted to be a really good runner. I wanted to make it to the elite level. And I was able to focus on that because school was online. A lot of jobs went out, right? People were on unemployment, so I had nothing else to focus on. And then once I quit running and I moved into something else, which was finance, it allowed me to be able to dive into that and create a space on YouTube, because viewership on Twitter and on YouTube and blah, blah, blah was higher than it's ever been. But at the same time, it dehumanizes people, right? I think there are some really great companies that were birthed from the COVID era, such as the metaverse. I don't think the metaverse is something that would have been attacked so heavily and so quickly if it weren't for March of 2020 or 2019, whatever the hell it is at this point. It feels like ages ago when COVID really hit hard. I think that the idea, if you never had COVID, would not be adapted as readily of the metaverse, because people were used to human interactions. Now, fast forward 2 years, 2.5 years. Well, what do we have now? Something that's seemingly impossible, especially for me as an extrovert, right? I would have never imagined 2 years of fucking isolation, being normal. And now it's normalized. So I think there's a lot of entrepreneurship opportunity that was birthed, but that dehumanizes people, and that's something that I see people in my life struggle with, myself struggle with, that's what scares me about COVID.
I think, societally, what you just said, Trey, many populations on the earth are increasingly pessimistic and distrustful. And as they struggle with, a disruptive economy, technology, and whatever social demographic trends are organic to where they live, their identities are being lost to some degree. A resurgence of allegiances to nation and whatever values that are there that they used to have, or they're clinging to, whether it be religion or mantra or whatever. And it's exposing these fault lines in society, and it increases a societal like volatility, if you will, because populations are more informed, have a greater ability to express their demands, and that has gotten to the point where it's too much now. It's like too many wrong people have the ability to speak and throwing up garbage, like straight up garbage. And it's like, I know that's a horrible thing to say, especially being an American, about freedoms and such, but I'm at that point where it's like, I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of it, man. And either a great war has to happen, or there has to be a cultural change that is going to be lasting, that we can all agree with. And I don't know if society's ready for that,
Well, it's something that we've moved away from. I think back to the founding fathers pledging their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to a higher cause, their words specifically. And now you have people who can jump on the internet and be faceless and nameless and say whatever the hell they want with zero accountability. And it doesn't even have to be right. It doesn't have to be based in fact at all. It can be based in whatever the heck they want. And no matter what they say, nobody is even if you call them out, it's I always hate dropping a quote without knowing who exactly said it, but in this case I've forgotten who said it. The idea that to refute bullshit on the internet is the effort to do so is an order of magnitude higher than the effort it took to create it. So it's almost not even worth messing with the fact that there is so much and call it, is it free? It's free speech, the ability to say anything to anyone with no repercussions.
So that's Brandolini's law.
That's the one.
Yeah, Brandolini's law and Dick's law. It's basically it's called bullshit asymmetry principle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's absolutely perfect. It's one of the most perfect things that has come out of the internet age in terms of philosophies, and I commend you on your use of that, by the way.
I always tell people the world's a lot nicer of a place than it is on Twitter.
It
whatever that
definitely
philosophy is, it's the idea of, this is why I think, and this is just my opinion, there's great things that come from both platforms, but I think just inherently the way that these are built, both Reddit and Twitter from the start were designed to be fucking cesspools of bullshit. They were designed to be that way because you don't have to have a picture attached to your face, and you can have a username, right? It's just built for people, and this isn't everybody, right? I've seen great things come out of both platforms. That's why I use both platforms, right? But I've seen just shit storms of stuff come off of both, because you can say whatever you want with no repercussions and with no identity attached. It's interesting stuff,
You guys remember that Goebbels effect, where if you say something enough times, it becomes the truth?
Yeah.
Yeah, Greater's fool theory, right?
Yeah,
the same thing.
Didn't work for Baghdad Bob, but
you leave him alone.
Oh, okay, yeah, shit.
He's a great man who just got caught in the wrong crowd.
Okay, that's fair.
That's fair. All I'm saying is this: we have this community now that is going to be inheriting essentially a tremendous amount of wealth, and we have this little platform. Trey, you have a huge responsibility on your shoulders because you have you have the lot right there. And it's as if like we have to earn a living, and then at the same time we have to provide good guidance, good sound knowledge, and what is, appropriate in a setting like this. We joke and we talk about Lambos and stuff. And I worry about that young father or that young family member who is actually going to go out and buy that Lambo, and doesn't understand the concept of appreciation and depreciation. And I worry about stuff like that, man. It's like, do you understand what this means? As soon as you drive it off the lot, it loses 1/3 of its value by the time you hit the stop sign. Are you aware of that? And it's like I'm talking to a brick wall, and I've had these conversations with other retail investors, what you should do with your money, how to spend it correctly and how not to blow it on materialistic things. And we have this generation, this culture right now where materialism is at such a high premium that I feel as if whatever we take away from the squeeze, it's just going to go back to the rich at the end of the day.
It's a tough situation, right? Because what I believe in, at the very least, and what I think many others believe in, is nobody has the right to tell somebody what to do with their money, for an investment, what they want to spend it on. What you can do is educate. And then from there, people make their own decisions in life. For example, right, you making a video on $1 million a share, you put out that information, people make a conclusion based off of it, and they make whatever decision they'd like based off of that conclusion, right? You can only do that with investment advice, or how to budget out your annual income, or hey, this car depreciates in value once you drive off the lot. Myself, I just I eat out every day, right? I like Subway, I like Arby's, and on Friday and Saturday night, I like to get some Jack Daniels and Kraken. That's it for me, but everyone's different. Everyone's got their fix, and it can be tough to lead the horse to the water sometimes, and I don't know. As a 24-year-old kid, I don't feel like I have the right to tell anybody how to spend their money, but I get your conundrum, man.
Well,
there is a sense of maybe some moral obligation that Al feels, in wanting the best for people.
Oh yeah, but everybody does, right?
The key thing that you want to keep in mind, Al, is that you can't change anyone. They have to want to change themselves.
Wait. I have to disagree with you. I think if you talk to people and you just have a heart to heart with people, that's always worked with me. If you explain something,
you gotta recognize the mechanism. Okay, you're having a heart to heart with them. What you're doing is you're putting out the information, and they are deciding to change themselves. You've persuaded them to do the changing, but you can't change them directly. It's always something that they want to do, because if they don't want to do it, they are going to resist you.
Let me tell a story as an example. When I was a kid, my dad always told me, son, your ego and your pride are too big. He'd always say, you're kind of a dick to people, right? You got to reel it in. You got to quit trying to flex. You got to quit trying to show people what you're made of, right? Your actions speak for themselves. He told me my entire life, banging his head against my head, right? Head butting the shit out of me. And I didn't realize it until he died. Catalyst. I drew conclusions from actions, from words, from X, from Y, from Z. He didn't do it, right? Not in his life. He didn't get to witness that. I drew the conclusion on my own based on what he presented to me. I have to draw that conclusion. If he didn't do it during his lifetime, he didn't do it. I did it, He influenced it, but you're the one that draws conclusions and makes decisions at the end of the day.
The beatings will continue until morale improves.
That's exactly it. So now I'm just banging my head against the wall. It's not against my dad's head,
Yeah. So we talked about market. We talked about economics. We talked about this community. So we don't know when the squeeze is going to happen. Before anyone starts to write in the comment sections, Trey doesn't know. I already asked him. He told me he doesn't know. Kyle doesn't know. Nobody knows what time this thing is going to happen. But what we do recommend, and then I'm going to speak for all three of us, is that you are prepared for it, prepared in every manner, whether it be in your heart, your mind, your spirit, whatever it takes for you to keep your composure and execute your trade at your time, in your price range, and at your discretion, more importantly. And like we said, we can't make any decisions for you. We can provide you the information, but ultimately it relies on you, who is cogently thinking. So I hope you gained value from this chat that we had. Trey, thank you for coming on. We had a wonderful time. I hope you come back again for another day and we can continue these deep discussions. Kyle, thank you for joining me as always. You're my great friend, my squad leader from the Marine Corps. And I think our next chat will be on NFTs, and I'll do some research on government and our government crypto program. I'll make some phone calls and get a scoop on that.
It's ultimately not going to matter. That's the fun part. But that's the discussion for the next video. It doesn't matter who holds the crypto and who doesn't. It's all going to go down the tubes. So
hopefully into our wallets, I'm hoping.
We'll see.
I'm going to get a dog. I lost my dog a week ago.
Yeah, no, I remember.
That, man.
Yeah, I'm getting a new dog. I think that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to heal from this one and then I get a new one. So on that note, Trey, please do come back. I'll invite you again. I hope you come back, dude. And I'll see you guys later. Thanks again. This is Al from Boston signing out.
We'll see ya.